welcome finally, all right, to our video. I titled it Friendly Dialogue with an Anti-Vaxxer, but that's because I haven't had time to really chat with Alif. First off, I really want to thank you for agreeing to come online, because I think you had nothing but my word. In our brief exchange, the only thing we've said is we'll try not to throw ad hominem at each other, and just that, right? And I said I will try. I'm not trying to ambush you. I'm not trying to trap you, and you're not walking into a trap where I'm gonna make fun of you, and then everyone's gonna like, oh, anti-vaxxer. No, none of that sort. I'm gonna really try to be civil, but right off the bat, I'm telling you, there's a disagreement. I disagree with you, you disagree with me. But how are we gonna go about it? I'll give you your chance to speak your piece, and I'll explain why people should vaccinate. Right? I don't know how this is gonna go. Whether one of us is gonna start flip table and stuff like that, but you seem like a friendly guy, and we have a mutual friend, so all right, let's just try this. I think the most important thing right now I need to clear up is, would you consider yourself an anti-vaxxer or vaccine hesitant?
First and foremost, Jickee, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this Facebook Live. As you mentioned yourself, this is your first time doing it. It's also my first time doing it. I've never done something like this before. But I think it's awesome, and it's very gentlemanly of you to invite me to have a public discourse about this contentious issue. Because from my personal experience, whenever I talk about this issue, all I meet is cognitive dissonance and ad hominems, and the first thing that comes up from their mouth is conspiracy theories. Anything that comes, any facts that we present that's counter narrative is always attacked with the epithet of conspiracy theories or anti-vaccine, which I feel is not a neutral term. So first and foremost, I just want to preface the discussion in terms of why I chose to take up the invitation. Like you mentioned it yourself, we were introduced by Vishnu Krishna. It's a good. I used to hang out a lot with Vishnu, so we used to play a lot of music together. But I think since the pandemic happened, we had intense disagreements about what it was and who are the culprits, etc. So it's been quite fortunate that I haven't been able to catch up with Vishnu on that level. So yeah, just to basically clarify why I chose to take up the invitation is because I feel dialogue is very, very important. As you alluded yourself earlier, right? If we come to a discussion trying to boost up our ego or trying to prove that we are right, or I'm eating an anti-vaxxer for breakfast, or I'm eating a doctor for breakfast, right? I think that kind of
not for breakfast anymore, maybe dinner lah.
Yeah, just for supper lah, a bit, right? A bit of anti-vaxxers for supper, right?
Supper.
Yeah, but just to preface, right, the reason why I choose to take up the invitation is basically to have a dialogue, because I've been trying to have a conversation with a lot of people, but either people ignore me or they just call me names. So I think that's not a conducive environment to have an intellectual discussion about a contentious issue that affects us in our daily lives. Because right now, under the lockdowns, under whatever that's being instituted by the government, right, under the directives of WHO or whoever, we've been bashed in the heads by this lockdowns. Let's just put it that way, right? So I think it's an important discussion to have. So just to outline where I'm coming from, right? So my intentions for this Facebook Live, to have this public discourse, one, as I mentioned to you, is to have a proper, intelligent, rational, and calm dialogue with those on the pro-vax side, because I think that has not happened. We have not been given the avenue to have this kind of debate or conversation, at least, right? Because as you see, the government is criminalizing speech. Any speech that is against the vaccines, any critical perspective on what's happening is being criminalized and being dubbed as anti-vaxxers. So I hope we can employ logic and reason in this discussion, right? And be open to challenge our belief systems, our opinions, because at the end of the day, it's not about being right. It's about everyone having back their rights, right? And being able to live as how we did, unobstructed and unoppressed by the current situation. So yeah, I just wanted to bridge that divide, and maybe we can have points of disagreements, points of agreements, and probably arrive at a more holistic picture about what's happening lah. So that's it for me.
That's true. I agree with you there. I think one thing about the pandemic is it's caused us to lose our humanity. All right?
I agree. 100%.
Yeah, to the point that like you say, Vishnu was your good friend, right? And you kind of sort of went separate ways because of this, you know, difference in opinion. And I know that people are just fighting. Okay. Well, for those who don't know, I'm actually a primary care physician. I am a doctor. All right, and even among doctors, you will find anti-vaxxers, and people are fighting. I mean, when someone says, I don't think I want to get the vaccine, we'll be throwing names at each other, you know. For those who don't know, ad hominem basically is the lowest form of argument where you are using, well, insults to make a point.
Personal
right?
attacks, attacks on character rather than attacks on the argument stuff,
Things like that. You're an idiot, example. I'm not calling you. Yeah, I'm just showing you an example. And that's what goes on, right? You start hating one another, and social media, to some extent, is to blame.
Very toxic.
I'm engaging with anti-vaxxers from time to time, but I find that I can't do it in the comment section because, for one, you're interacting with someone who's got no face, just a profile picture. Sometimes it's just a picture of a cat. So there's no human behind that face. You can't see that I'm smiling. You can't guess my tone, whether I'm being sarcastic.
You can't get nuances. Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So I came to realize that if I can have a conversation where I can see your face, I mean, if we can have like a meeting over a cup of coffee or tea or whatever is your drink or your poison, so to speak, we probably have a civil conversation, right? We won't be banging the table in front of everyone. But because on social media, in the comment section, you know, you just channel all your hate. I couldn't communicate with anyone. And what I've realized that if I could do a video call, it's actually a little bit more conducive. So I actually offered to do, hey, let's just do a private, friendly video call. But you were like, you know, let's just go live right away. And I was like, okay, why not? And Vishnu suggested, you know, make an event page. And I don't know, like I've seen a lot of strangers, people I don't know. So I don't know what the crowd is like. I believe there could be a fair mix of vaxxers and anti-vaxxers. I'm sure it's going to be polarized. So, bro, ignore the comment section. I can control my feelings, my emotions, and how I react to your opinions. But I can't vouch for the people in the comment section.
Sure. Let's ignore
yeah. So the best I can say, guys. Yeah, guys, right? Please be nice. Be nice. Don't like, you know, insult one another. But if you want to, I mean, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not guru discipline or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just a statistical feature that, you know, there are more people who would resort to the lowest common denominator than people who would you know, try their level best to have an educated, intelligent conversation, right? So it's just a statistical feature. So we just need to just ignore the masses who are intent on hurling mud at each other and not having anything productive in terms of conversation, right?
Yeah, tell me about yourself.
Sure. My name is Alif Shah. I'm 29 this year. I work as a sales manager for a local fintech firm. So I graduated with a degree in economics and management with the University of London. So you know, I've been in sales since I was graduated. So that's what I've been. So in sales, you know, you have to talk to all kinds of people. You know, especially if you're doing B2B sales, you have to be able to engage in a high-level conversation with a lot of people. And what you need to employ is you need to employ a lot of empathy, because you need to get into the other person's head, right, and speak from their point of view. So I think what I do have a lot of is empathy, but it also means I get quite affected emotionally when I see terrible things happening. So empathy is a kind of a double-edged sword, because you can relate really fast with people, but at the same time you are very susceptible to any sort of emotions, be they positive or negative. So basically, before 2020, Jik said, I've not had a position on vaccines. Right? I think a lot of us who are dubbed as anti-vaccines never had a position on vaccines before 2020. And the reason why is because it was never relevant to our lives. Right? So, but right now, you can't help but have an opinion on the vaccines, because it has affected our lives in such a fundamental way, and is being used as a justification for a lot of different policies that's been rolled out. So first and foremost, I just want to refute what is implied in the very title of this Facebook Live as well. You know, as you mentioned, I give you the benefit of the doubt, and I take you in good faith. You know, we've never had a conversation before, so that's probably the reason why you claim the whole.
yeah, to clarify, are you an anti-vaxxer
Yeah,
or vaccine hesitant, right?
yeah. So that's what I wanted to unpack first and foremost. So what I want to say is that what has been framed is a false dichotomy. Is right. Is you either pro-vax or you anti-vax or you vaccine hesitant. So the word anti-vaccine, anti-vaxxer, and vaccine hesitant, I don't think it's a neutral. Those are neutral words. They are very politically loaded terms, and they imply an epithet, right? This is what from my experience, this is what I feel it is. Because as soon as you label someone as anti-vaxxer, immediately all kinds of negative connotations are attached to it, right? And then if you label someone as vaccine hesitant, you are implying that the person is hesitant to take vaccine because they are uneducated about it, right? So just to make it clear, I am not an anti-vaxxer. I never claimed to be one, right? And I think the mislabeling and the misrepresentation in this issue is very, very prevalent, because we just label people because we see it in the media, but we never had a conversation with another human being and asking, hey, are you anti-vaccine? No, we just go into the conversation thinking that this person is this or that label, right? So I feel like the term anti-vaccine or conspiracy theorists, all of these are politically loaded terms, and for me, I see that it's an attempt to stop people from thinking. It's a kind of like an Orwellian thought crime, right? Oh, as you don't want to talk about it because you're scared of being labeled a certain way, right?
No, Big Brother is watching, bro. Big Brother is watching.
Yeah, they've been watching for a long time.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Go
So
on.
basically,
Sorry.
the labeling and the misrepresentation, I think, is typical of the bully tactics employed by mainstream media, employed by governments, right, to stigmatize, to demonize, antagonize a section of the population that don't believe in a very specific body of knowledge that supports a certain thesis that vaccines are safe and effective, etc. Right?
All right.
So I think we need to
Can I
be
pause
more.
you? Can I just pause you there for a while and just
Sure.
yeah, sorry, interrupt here for a while and add to what you're saying. Yes,
Mm.
the world is polarized now, right? Whether it's politically or religious or race related. Now the thing is, yes, I think there's mislabeling on one end, calling you guys anti-vaxxers or other names, anti-science, whatnot, right? I think it's equally on the other end, right? The far, I'm not sure left or right or up or down, attacking the other end, saying that all doctors are shrills of big pharma who are corrupted. All rich people are evil. They just want to make more money. They want to buy another Ferrari.
I agree.
All big pharma, yeah, big pharma and all that kind of thing. So I mean, like, hey, when you look at me right now, like, okay, I'll just make it clear. I don't receive any money from big pharma, and most doctors don't actually, not
Yeah.
directly. Right? So
Just to
yeah,
interject there, Jackson, you see
I
how
think
we.
both ends are responsible for the name calling. Yeah, it goes both ends. So I mean, people on my side of the camp may have insulted you and fling insults. People on the other side of the camp, whether it's your side or any other side, they are responsible for creating this, like furthering this divide. So just to make it clear that it's both sides. I mean, it takes two to tango,
Yep,
right? So,
yep.
extreme left
So
and
I just
extreme
want
right.
to, yeah, I just wanted to add on to that as well, right? You see how this conversation progressed, right? We started the conversation, we are assuming each other's position before we even ask the question. We are already assuming, oh, this guy must be pro-vax, he must be a big pharma shield, he must be an enemy that I need to crush immediately. As on the other side, oh, this guy is an anti-vax, he must be anti-science, he must be uneducated, stupid, doesn't have an education, and irrational, right? So we are already assuming, making false assumptions about each other before having an actual conversation. So I think the problem here is this polarization that you mentioned. I agree, it's happening, and it's happening at a very deep level, and we're all at loggerheads with each other because, to be honest, I can no longer. I have lost a lot of respect for a lot of people for the past 1 year because of this topic. And I'll be able to explain myself why later on. But basically, what I think my diagnosis of why polarization is happening is not because of social media. It's not because people are irrational or hateful. The reason why I think polarization is happening is because differences of opinions, there are no problems when it comes to differences of opinions. You can hold a contrary opinion to mine, right? Throughout history, we've seen people believe all kinds of weird things, right? When it comes to religions or cults or whatever, people believe all sorts of different things. But the reason why polarization happens is because a state, a central authority, takes one side, implements it as policy, and says anyone that doesn't follow this narrative that we are enforcing via rule of law, via enforcement, backed with violence of the courts, of legal system, economic violence, social exclusion, social demonization. When the state does this, takes an opinion and mandates it, right, force everyone to follow, or else, this is when polarization happens.
Make your point.
So my diagnosis problem is that this is not really a public health issue. This is an individual rights issue. This is a topic about how far can the government mandate things to control micro aspects of an individual's lives, to the extent that the state can decide what you should put and should not put in your own body. I think this is where the crux of the problem is, and this is where we can locate why the polarization happens. Because I'll make another, I'll add on to that argument, right? Because if the government says, okay, the vaccines are voluntary, we're not going to punish anyone for not taking it, we're not going to exclude them from social life, we're not going to tell them that if you don't have your vaccine, you don't have a job, like what they're doing in Israel. They're doing no jab, no job policy, right? If the government doesn't level these threats to the people who do not believe in vaccines, no one will have an issue. You and me, we would be able to have different opinions, and we're not going to go at each other's throats, because none of us are using state power to enforce violence on the other side, right? So I think that's the core problem, is that imposition, authoritarianism that says you have to follow one rule. If not, you are anti-science, anti-vaccine, terrible human being.
Okay, if you could really quickly make your point, because I don't want it to go too long on one side. So are you done with your point? Because I'll make a quick counterpoint.
So that's my point. My point is, okay, so the crux of my point is, I would like you and everyone on the pro-vaccine side to stop using the term anti-vaxxer, number one, because it's not a neutral term, right? There can be no productive conversation if you're getting into a conversation with someone, you immediately labeling them with a negative label. So in the spirit of good faith, I would like to ask you and everyone
Actually, you'll be surprised. There are some people who identify as anti-vaxxers.
Sorry, just to finish up my point, right? I was saying,
sure.
This is for me, right? Like when you invite someone to a conversation, to a public discourse, you will want to represent that person in the way that he wants to be represented. So I'm just making it clear here, I don't want to be represented as a anti-vaxxer. I do not want to be represented as vaccine hesitant. What I would accept, only three labels. You can call me a pro-health freedom advocate, you can call me pro-choice, or you can call me pro-national immunity. If you're gonna insist on labeling me as an anti-vaxxer or have vaccine hesitant, I think it's not gonna be a productive conversation, right? So what I would say is that if you're listening to me, I'm saying the pro-vaccine and the anti-vaccine side are false dichotomy. When I say false dichotomy, it means that you have to pick a side. I am not anti-vaccine, I am pro-choice. My position is this, and I'll state it very clearly, unambiguously for all to hear and for you to understand as well. I am not pro-vaccine, I am not anti-vaccine. What I am saying, and a lot of people in my position are saying, we're saying every individual should have the right to choose and should not be stigmatized, alienated, demonized, and antagonized if they choose to take it or not.
Okay, so I'm going to pause you there again. Yeah, I'm going to pause you there again. You know what? If you're going to go by that definition, then there's nothing to disagree here, because I agree.
Exactly.
You should have the right to what goes in your body. Fine. You should get education. I mean, no one should force anything into you. Someone should, should explain to you. And once they've got the information they need, because everyone has to weigh the risk and benefit, right? Not everyone's risk is the same. In the same way, not everyone's benefit is going to be the same, right? So after, given the chance to listen to some explanation and all that, then you're free to make your decision. And I agree. If after listening to all the reasoning, the science behind it, after looking at the evidence, and you decide, okay, I'm not going to vaccinate, I'm not going to shame you, bro. I mean, I know what you're getting at. And in all those things, you'll be surprised, we actually agree on those things. And if we're going to, I mean, yes, we can talk about all the things we agree on, then, you know, we're not getting to the topic at hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You'll be surprised. And in fact, I would tell you this. I'm not pro-vax at either, right? Okay, there are people who are on the yay science crowd. If you're liberal, you're left, you're young, you're hip, you're pro-science, you're yay science crowd, you would share memes from IFLS, IF King Love Science, for example, all right? Then you would take the vaccine. Because if you don't take the vaccine, you'll be viewed as, oh, you are a Trump supporter, right?
Yeah, but that's the problem, you see. Like, people are making these decisions because they want to be attached to a certain label or identity.
Right.
We should be making the decision.
Yeah, so there's polarity, right? So so that this is your tribe, right? So it's tribalism. If you're part of this tribe, you take the vaccine. If you're part of this tribe, you will not take the vaccine. So if you're part of this tribe and you take the vaccine, you'll be excommunicated. And if you're part of this tribe, you say, hey, I don't think I want the vaccine, you'll be excommunicated as well. I think you're somewhere in the middle, and surprisingly, I think I'm telling you now, I'm somewhere in the middle as well, right? I wouldn't even put myself in the label. I mean, I'm pro-science, I'm pro-this, I'm pro-that. No, I read journals, I examine the evidence, I look at the data, and I try to educate people. That is all. And one thing I can be sure, what I do is I try not to assume malintention in people, right? So when I look at you, I'm not thinking you're a monster. You want to get everyone to not vaccinate, and then, you know, people will die because of you. No, but I think you are concerned, right? I mean, you wouldn't be talking about all these things unless you're concerned about people's life or people's right or freedom and things like that. So yeah, you know, things like that. So anyway, if we could really get to, okay, have you registered for vaccine?
Nope. I will not register.
Would you encourage your friends to get the vaccine, or would you discourage them? Would you discourage them?
I will not discourage them if that is their wish. But if they ask me my opinion, I will tell them flatly what my opinion is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, and if someone asks you your opinion, you can tell your opinion, definitely, right? I agree with that. Okay, so guys, you heard that he is not an anti-vaxxer, neither is he a vaccine hesitant. But his opinion is, well, he doesn't want to get the vaccine, and he's got his reason. So we'll get to that. All right. So my question is this:
I am pro freedom, I am pro-choice, I am pro-natural immunity. These are the three labels I will accept for me and the people on my side.
All right. Those are separate issues, I'm sure. Yeah. So pro-choice,
it's the same issue.
Yeah. All right.
It's the same issue because you say. Let me just make my point, right?
You start the labeling again. So it's like, hey, if you are pro-choice, you will not take the vaccine. But I'm sure
that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Listen, that's not what I'm saying. Right? That is not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I think what I'm saying is
the labels do not say whether you're going to take the vaccine or not. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. Please don't misconstrue me. I'm not saying
I'm not trying to strawman you. If I did by accident, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry.
All right. I just want to clarify, right? When I say that I'm pro-choice, what I'm saying is every person should have the right to decide whether they want it or not, and on top of that decision, should not be discriminated, alienated, stigmatized, antagonized, or demonized. That is my position.
Well, in the same way, I've vaccinated myself. I educate people and encourage them to vaccinate. But can I say I'm also pro-choice?
Okay, what I would say is if you are pro-choice, the thing is, the problem is not between you and me, Jickee. The problem is between me
and
the
government. Yeah, so I'm not the government. So I'm pro-choice like you, bro.
Sure, right? let me make my point.
I'm no Hitler. If we could do away with the labels, but you want to stick to the labels, let's not dwell on that.
It's not that I want to stick to labels, Jickee.
All right,
can you give me
can have a label. Dude, I'm not taking that label away from you, bro. I'm not depriving you of those labels. Yeah.
Can you listen to me for like 2 minutes?
Yes.
Can you give me the speed? Like I said, your diagnosis of the problem is you're saying the problem is pro-vax and anti-vax. That is not my diagnosis. My diagnosis is people are being deprived of the choice, of the free choice to make a decision. My problem is with the government. You say that my problem is not with you. My problem is with the government. The government is saying that if I don't vaccinate, I cannot travel, I cannot take a job, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, and I'm labeled as a threat to society. When you're on my camp, right? If you're on my camp, if a central authority says that and pushes out that propaganda, how would you feel when your fellow countrymen doesn't back you up for your right to choose? Of course you feel this is offensive, right? And people who go on social media virtue signaling, oh, I've taken my vaccine, please do your part, be a responsible citizen. Like, come on. I mean, we don't take vaccine because of certain reasons. So if you allow us the space to explain our reasons, we'll happily do that.
All right. Can I say something now? The reality is, no one is actually forcing anyone to get vaccinated right now. And like, okay, you're saying like, if you don't, wait, let me talk that, bro. So you're saying if you don't vaccinate, you can't travel, right? But right now, even if you're vaccinated, you can't travel, right? I'm vaccinated. I've been vaccinated since March. I can't travel, right? If I travel, I still have to quarantine 14 days, same as if someone who's not vaccinated. So those rules are not here at the moment. And coming back to the first thing you were saying, that the world is polarized because of governments, because of tyranny or something like that. I'm gonna have to. Well, it's not like I disagree and I'm on the other end of the camp. I partially disagree. That is one factor, but a bigger factor is social media, right? So what happens with social media is, right, when you like something, right, your Facebook algorithm, your YouTube shows you only the things that you like. So you follow the channel that tells you the things that you kind of believe, and the YouTube further suggests videos that you would like, right? When you like that, you see more things like that. You hang around. Not okay. When I say you, I'm not meaning you. I'm giving an example of some people of a certain, camp of thought, right? So what happens? This person will just hang around people of the same mindset, right? Because like someone with a different mindset, you end up fighting and you go your separate ways. So you end up having an echo chamber, right? So you only hang around people who agree with you. People who disagree with you, you're gonna end up fighting anyway. So you almost don't interact with these people, right? And in the end, you form camps, you form tribes, right? And you get this tribal mentality. So like I say, you check all the boxes. If I am pro-vax, I am, pro-science, I am liberal, I am pro-LGBTQIA, and if I'm religious, I am conservative, I'm a Trump supporter, I am anti-vax, I am flat earther, which is wrong, right? Which is wrong, and I agree with you there. So governments have been tyrannical from like time immemorial, right? I mean, back in 1940.
I agree. And we're getting deeper.
Yes, somewhat evil, but they do what they can. And right now, no one is forcing vaccine. We've not had this no jab, no job thing right in Malaysia right now. So so it looks like, okay, you don't want to be vaccinated. I want to get to why you don't want to get vaccinated. We've got one thing clear: you don't want to vaccinate, right? You don't want to get the COVID-19 vaccine, any of the vaccine, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, or Sinovac or AstraZeneca, none of it, right? Doesn't matter how it works, doesn't matter what is the science behind it, doesn't matter what, whether it's a nasal spray or a patch or anything like that, right? All right, good. All right, so at least we got that clear. Finally, all right, rewind 1.5 years back, right? Okay, 1.5 years back, end of 2019 or early 2020. Can I ask you, just to reflect a little bit, how was it? How did you first hear about COVID-19? What was going through your mind at that time, and how did you find out more? And basically, just tell me, like, was it like early of 2020, just before the lockdown, or when was it that COVID-19 became real to you? And what do you think of COVID-19 generally? Yeah.
Sure. That's a big question to unpack, but I'll attempt to do that. So I'll just share very frank views of the situation, right? So when the whole COVID thing appeared in the news, I don't really pay attention. I'm not someone who watches the news. I think it's all, a lot of it is propaganda and pushing a certain kind of agenda. So that's me. I don't like to watch the news. I don't watch the news. I like to read books. I like to talk to people. And I think it's, to me, I believe the TV dumbs you down. But that's just me, right? So when I saw about the COVID-19 thing, right, the first thing that came to my mind was like, wow, tickets to Japan are super cheap, bro. Let's go.
All right.
That was the thought process in my mind, because I don't buy the hype. I never bought the hype, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Japan because it's super cheap. I'm going to get a flight ticket and go. So that was my thought process. The moment COVID-19 became real was when they locked everyone down, right?
March.
And said that if you move 10 kilometers beyond your house, we will fine you 1,000 ringgit or chuck you in jail. So that was the turning point for me. That was like, whoa, governments can't do this. They're supposed to be elected by us. Governments are supposed to, theoretically, according to the mainstream knowledge, governments are supposed to protect and preserve the rights of the citizens, not step on it, not abuse it. So I'm like, what do you mean I can't go 10 kilometers beyond my house? I can't have another person from the same household in the same car as me. You know, you're going to fine me. Like, are we going to allow the government to speak to us that way, in a language of force, coercion, and violence? I think that's the wrong mentality to have, because we have forgotten what is the point of a government. So after that point of time, right? So to me, just to answer your question briefly, COVID-19 became real to me when there was threat of force to go against the narrative. So that's when it became real to me. That's when I started doing a lot of research, started reading a lot of anarchist and libertarian doctrines, started to understand what is the function of the state, how it came about, what is government, right? At the end of the day, what is it? It's a class that does not produce anything, parasites of other members of society, and enforces its will by use of violence and force. So if I go out and kill someone, they'll call it murder. But if the government goes and kills someone, they call it capital punishment. If I go to another person, I take his money, right, extort him for his money, they call it theft, extortion. But when the government does it, they call it taxation. So I started reading more libertarian and anarchist philosophies, which is when I understood the reason for being of states and governments. And this is how I view the lens. It's not a public health problem to me at all. It's purely a political problem.
So let me clarify. I'm going to try to steelman you a bit. So you're saying that so that when the lockdown happened, you believe this is not a public health issue, but more of the government decision to strengthen their power or something like that, or is a form of corruption?
Yes. So
so basically, it's stifling your freedom and liberty and stuff. The values that you hold dear, your moral values.
Yes. So the way I see it, governments all over the world are colluding to move the entire world into a state of totalitarianism, to move the world into more centralization of power, because this is what the results we've seen since last year. Since last year, when they locked this all down, all the poor people, working class, middle class, got destroyed, and the richest people had their net worths doubled, tripled. So the way I see this is a power grab for resources, right, for control, and the death of the free market, and you know, the death blow towards competition and a world where liberty and freedom exists. We do not have liberty and freedom. If we go beyond 10 kilometers outside our house, the government threatens to fine us. We do not have it.
All right. That's a very interesting point of view. What about COVID-19 as an infection? Like, do you think it was a real, or it was completely made up?
So just to answer that question, the way I code it, this COVID-19 is just a huge branding and marketing campaign, because historically people have died from the seasonal flu. 500,000 to 1 million people die every year from the seasonal flu, right? To me, it is no coincidence that for the year 2020, the deaths for heart attack, cancer, lung pneumonia, lung disease, seasonal flu have all gone down, but the deaths for COVID has gone up. To me, the way I see it, this is creative accounting. This is fraud on a massive scale. And you know, if you will allow me time to explain and go through the evidence that I have, I'm pretty sure I can make a case for it. But the problem when I start talking about this issue is immediately someone says, oh, that's conspiracy theory.
Yeah, all right. So basically, you're saying that COVID-19 doesn't exist, and because the number
It's
of
a
deaths
scam. That's what I'm saying. Just
overlap
to
in
be
a
direct and super
so
unambiguous, COVID-19 is a
yeah,
scam, and I stand by that.
you're saying that for the year of 2019, 1 million people at the most, right? 1 million people would have died of seasonal flu anyway, right?
Uh, yeah, okay, yep, okay.
All right. But in the year of 2.5 million people who died of COVID-19, on top of the number of
Okay,
people who did die of seasonal flu. It did go
sure,
down, but we'll get to that
sure. So what is your
too.
question?
What do you think of that? I mean, unless the
Okay,
seasonal flu was worse last year,
sure,
when people was they were wearing face masks, they were doing all these things,
sure,
and yet the number of deaths from seasonal flu actually went up almost double, more than double, right? It's 2.5
sure,
million people dying in a year. Uh,
sure,
and we're taking the maximum, right? If you take 500,000, then it's almost 5 times more deaths
sure,
from seasonal flu.
sure.
Like,
So
don't you
can you
think
can you
that's a
rephrase
bit?
your question? What is your question?
All right, so you're saying that seasonal flu kills 500,000 to a million
That is
people
not what I'm
a
saying
year.
at all. That is not what I'm saying at
And
all.
all
That is
right,
not what I'm saying.
that's not what you're saying. All right, right. Like,
So
like I say,
okay,
I'm not trying to trap you here, so you can
sure.
clarify. You can clarify yourself.
Sure. So
Yeah.
okay. So give me some time to clarify what I mean,
All
right?
right. Okay.
So this is
I will
this
not
is
interrupt.
why a lot of
No,
people get turned off when I start this conversation because they can't follow it. They can't follow it, right? So first and foremost, I would like to ask you and just to start this conversation. First and foremost, I would like to ask, how do we know COVID-19 as a coronavirus exists? Number one.
all right. Okay. If you want to know, all right. So basically, at near the end of 2019, around December 2019, a lot more people are getting sick in the city of Wuhan in China, right? So they would present with symptoms similar to what we call pneumonia, which is an infection in your lung, inflammation in your lung, right? Now the thing is, when you get pneumonia, you go to a hospital. Now, anyone who is working in the hospitals will know this. Right, so we have what we call bread and butter cases in every department, right? So in a surgery ward, your bread and butter will be appendicitis, right? You do appendicectomies, right? In an ONG ward, your obstetrics and gynecology would have deliveries, right? Most cases will be deliveries, and it's bread and butter, right? And for me, as a GP, it'll be cough and colds, right? So that will be my bread and butter. So if you're in the medical ward, your bread and butter would be pneumonia. If you go to a ward, you will see about in a ward of about 28 people, maybe about 70% of all the patients there would be suffering from pneumonia. All right. And of all these guys, well, almost 90% of them would recover and be discharged. And they may need oxygen, but most of the time just a nasal prong where we just wear something over the nose like that. It might they might need a face mask where you deliver a higher flow of oxygen, but then they recover. But for these guys who come with pneumonia, what happens is about 2/3 of them will definitely require oxygen because they desaturate, right? Meaning their oxygen levels drop. Normal is above 95% up to about 99%. These guys will drop, their oxygen saturations will be like 80% or lower, right? And they will need oxygen, right? What they find is that 2/3 of these guys will actually deteriorate to the point that they need to be intubated, right? So when your oxygen doesn't come up even with the highest flow of oxygen, we have to intubate them, right? So we put a tube through, connect them to a ventilator where the machine breathes for them. All right, that's the only way to save them because you keep dropping, your oxygen level drops below 80%. It goes on and on and on. You get hypoxia, meaning not enough oxygen in your body, right? In the blood, right? When your brain doesn't receive enough oxygen, other parts of your body don't receive enough oxygen. You get damages, and some of this is irreversible, right? So what happens in normal pneumonia? They recover with a little bit of oxygen, some antibiotics, azithromycin, augmentin, right? This cocktail, 5 days, they're out. But these guys, about 70% of them, they'll deteriorate, actually get a ventilator. Fine. they get moved to the ICU where they're put on a ventilator, right? Now, what happens here? If you go to ICU, typically there will be about 5 or 10 patients. Now, what usually happens is not all of them will die. Not all of them will die. If they've had some lung issue, they're on a ventilator, they'll be nursed for a while. Eventually, we'll be able to wean them off the machine, right? So we bring down the oxygen level, we bring down the FiO2. Over time, right, we'll be able to extubate them, all right, and they get, de-escalated back to a high dependency ward or a normal ward, right? But what happens with these guys who come in with this type of pneumonia, right? They knew it was a viral pneumonia because the white cells were lower, they couldn't isolate any bacteria, right? So these guys who were ventilated, 50% of them died. And with enough patients coming with this exact same pathogenesis, we know that it is not your normal flu. It is not your normal pneumonia even. And bacterial pneumonias are generally more severe than your viral pneumonia or atypical pneumonia usually. So these guys, viral pneumonia, at least like 10 times more severe than a normal viral pneumonia. So they knew that something was wrong. They isolated it. Right. Okay. We don't typically go and try to isolate a virus or a bacteria and find it's okay. Bacteria, yes, we can grow it on a petri dish, but viruses a little bit more difficult. You're not going to put every person's, try to swap them and then put them in an electron microscope and find out what it looks like. I think anyone knows what the coronavirus looks like, right? So they isolate them. It looks like coronavirus. When they do the genomic coding, they find that it's a completely different thing, and that's when they, discovered SARS-CoV-2. But at that time, they call it the novel coronavirus, right? So it is a real infection. It is a lot more severe and threatening than your normal pneumonia. So,
so
as far as
given a very,
it's real.
I'll just reiterate my question, right? How do you know that they are having the symptoms that they are having because of a virus called COVID-19? Can you tell me what the symptoms of COVID-19 are? Symptoms of COVID-19 is a cough, is a flu, is soreness, fatigue. About all of those symptoms can be found in all kinds of diseases and conditions, right? So how can you say when we have a smorgasbord of symptoms which covers just about basic flu, right? How can you quote this as a novel coronavirus that is dangerous? Okay, so you want to say that this is dangerous, right? Let's talk about how dangerous it is. Let's say if I accept the assertion, okay, the virus exists, but I do believe that coronaviruses have always existed, they have always mutated, right? My contention is that, because we name it COVID-19, we push marketing and branding to it so much, it looks as if it's a big thing when I feel like it's a non-issue, right? But we can progress to the next discussion. The next discussion is, let's say I accept COVID-19 exists. We don't have that discussion, for example, for the sake of argument. Then the next question I will ask you is, how deadly is the virus?
All right, so your first question was, what are the symptoms? And you're saying that the symptoms is quite similar to a typical flu, right?
Yeah.
And I agree,
so,
right?
So I'm saying, if it looks like a flu, if it sounds like a flu, if it acts like a flu, it probably is a flu.
All right. I'm going to have to disagree with you there. A lot of things present like a flu. Could be anything from bacterial infection and atypical pneumonia, or a bacterial infection or a viral infection, right? So yeah, the symptoms present like a flu. So you have a cough, sore throat, right? 60% of them get a loss of sense of smell and taste, and that is not normal with most flu. But then progressing from that, 20% of those who get infected, right? Okay, yes, about 17% of them may be asymptomatic, right? All right, and then about roughly 80% of this, including the 70%, 80% will have a mild infection, but 20% will then progress to a lung infection. Now, influenza is probably the worst type of flu you can get. Your likelihood of getting pneumonia from influenza is about 0.05%. It's a big difference from influenza, right?
Sure.
Now, how deadly is it? Now the thing is, I'm sure you've probably heard this. People say, yeah, I have a 99.7% of surviving this illness. Would you agree with that?
Yep. According to the
Right.
official statistic, you have a okay, let me just look at the numbers, right? The numbers as of today, it says that the death rate is 0.67%. That basically means that I have a 99.33% of surviving this so-called deadly virus. Like, to me, if you tell me, right, because we're evaluating something based on math, based on numbers, which try to be very objective, right? We say, what's the mortality rate of A, B, C, D, E, right? So if you're telling me this thing has a mortality rate, and you agree that this is the official statistics, right? That the mortality rate is 0.67%, meaning 99.33% time. Yeah, because the deaths for today in Malaysia is 4.884, and the total cases is about 700,000, right? So that equates to 0.67% death rate, right? If you're telling me that I have a 99.33% of surviving what you have dubbed as COVID-19, and you are insisting that it's so dangerous that we need to lock everyone down under house arrest, we need to kill the economy, we need to stop people from going to work, we need to stop people from seeing each other, we need to mandate all kinds of laws that are very, very offensive to the dignity and liberty of individuals, I would say you're talking crap. How can you say this is dangerous when your survival rate is 99.33%? Like, are we arithmetically challenged here?
Okay, so
that's what I can't wrap my head around it. I just can't. I can't wrap my head around it.
Can I try to answer this? Can I try to answer this? All right. So
yep.
How do you get that value, 99.7% roughly, right?
Blah blah blah. And then they show you the total statistical.
Can I just read quickly? All right. So that is case fatality rate of Malaysia, right? Based on number of people who were infected and the number of people who died, right? So number over the number of people who were infected, and you times 100, then you get a case fatality about 0.6%, right? Now this is a blanket mortality rate, and it changes from person to person. All right. If you get COVID, your risk of dying is probably 0.5%. Now, for someone who's 65 years old with multiple comorbidities like diabetes and heart disease, the risk of dying could be as high as 5%, even higher, right? Now, if you look at the whole world, right, about roughly 3 million deaths, 3.5 million deaths, and about 100 million cases.
Can I interject?
Right? If you make a calculation, the death rate is no longer the same. Case fatality changes is about 2%. Okay, now you can do this. You can go to a website called Our World in Data, right? And search case fatality rate. Your case fatality rate changes with time as well. You'll see that around April, May, the case fatality rate was as high as 10%, right? Especially in Italy. At one point, the highest rate was 17%, right?
All right.
You look at the graph, you see that it's since come down. It's because we've discovered ways to treat it better, all right? And one of the ways that really helped was when we discovered used to reduce the severity during the cytokine storm phase of the disease, right? So these things matter. You can't just give a blanket rate for everyone. So the rate is different for you, the rate is different for me, and the rate is very different for a kid, right? The kid, the risk of a kid dying, right, a 5-year-old getting the infection and dying is close to 10 in a million, which is super low. And that brings down the overall rate as well.
Okay, sure. So let me just put it in a different way, right? We have had one whole year to gather enough data. So this is not a small sample size, right? This is a huge sample size, like Donald Trump would say huge, right? This is a huge sample size across one whole year. We have looked at enough data to make a conclusion about the numbers. And in statistics, right, we learn in statistics, if the results are over a small sample space, we cannot call it statistically valid because it's a small sample space. But if you have a huge amount of data, right, and over a long period of time, which we've had one whole year of this whole so-called pandemic, right? We've had one whole year. So even after the whole time data has been collected, your death rate average still sits at 0.67. So
No,
I
it's been
understand your argument.
going down. It was higher earlier. The death rate was
Sure.
higher earlier. You can go to our world in data,
I
search
understand. So
fatality rate, look at the
counterpoint
graph.
to that argument.
Yeah, from April, April, May, that's the peak. The rate
Sure.
went as high as 15% worldwide.
Sure.
Worldwide. If you look
Sure.
at Italy alone, it will be higher.
Sure.
Now the thing is, you mentioned statistics, so I'm going to assume, are you familiar with biostatistics and epidemiology? Some
No,
of these
I'm not.
terminology. Right,
No,
there's
I'm
this
not.
thing called confounding factors. Are you
Okay.
familiar with the term confounding factors? So when we
Nope.
say that something happens, okay, we can't say that, oh, it's caused by this. All right, so like, let's say I eat chicken rice. If I eat chicken rice right now, and tomorrow I get a heart attack, can I say that chicken rice caused a heart attack? No, right? Because if I were to say that, then there is a correlation between eating chicken
Can I
rice.
interject?
All right, bro, I'm just going to make this point. Okay? It sounds like you're about to interrupt me here, all right? If I eat chicken rice right now and I die of heart attack tomorrow, it shows that the chicken rice, there's a correlation between eating chicken rice and getting heart attack the next day. But correlation does not imply causation, right? So
I 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, it's true. All right, so now the thing, this is what we call a confounding factor. We need to find out what are the other factors that may have caused the heart attack the next morning. Was it because I'm a 60-year-old gentleman with diabetes, hypertension, obesity and metabolic syndrome? Was it because I was a smoker? Is it because I had a very stressful night? Was it because all these other factors that we're not looking? We're just talking about chicken rice and the fact that he died the next day. Now you're looking at case fatality rate. It's pretty low, it's 0.6%. What are the confounding factors? Are you getting treatment? Are you being hospitalized when you're the 20% that gets severe infection, right? Is it because people are getting vaccination, right? 2.5 billion people in the world have been vaccinated, all right, have received the vaccine. And that contributes to the dropping mortality rate of COVID-19.
That is, of course, what the pharma industry
we found out ways to treat them better because of dexamethasone, right? Right. In addition to okay, some things are questionable, whether remdesivir works, whether giving antibiotics at which point of treatment is required. Oxygen is definitely important, right? A lot of people are dying in India, almost 3,000, 4,000 a day, deaths every day, which is not normal, even for even for flu. All right, I don't think influenza is killing 3,000, 4,000 people in India every day. People were like paying
I have
money
a point
for oxygen, right? They needed oxygen. When they got oxygen, they didn't die. But when they didn't have oxygen, they would die. India's case fatality rate went as high as 2% at one point, and it stabilizes around 1 point something, which is not the same with the case fatality rate in Malaysia, because our healthcare system has not reached the point of, we've not reached the breaking point, right? When the wards are full, when we've run out of oxygen, when we've got no ventilators available, then the case fatality rate will actually go up, right? So the thing is, these are all confounding factors that contribute to your statistics, right? You can just focus on one thing and then a result, like your X and your Y axis. Forgot to.
Can I clarify?
Other factors outside that we're not putting into the statistic that affect it as well, and that's what we call confounding factors.
So thank you for that explanation on confounding factors. Now, my counterpoint to that would be, we say these people, like you said yourself, correlation is not causation, right? You cannot say that because I ate chicken rice today, I died tomorrow is because of the chicken rice. I agree with you 100%. So my next question is, how do you know, how can you certify that these people all died because of what we dubbed as COVID-19, when majority, over 90% of people who die from it, have more than 2 or 3 comorbidities? Could it be that they died because of the comorbidities and not actually because of the COVID? Right? Because, I mean, just bring up a fact, right? That I just want to make the audience understand. For example, in the UK, it says that this is government policy that is enforced for the NHS and all hospitals, right? For the healthcare industry that comes from the government. The government says that, the policy says that if anyone tests positive for COVID-19 and dies within 60 days of testing positive, it does not matter what they die of, we will class that death as COVID-19. So the problem here is misdefinition of cause of death because of top-down directives from the government telling you to classify all deaths as COVID-19. For example, I just want to read a very simple example, right? So there's this website called outbreak.my. I recommend everyone that's watching this to go on their website to look at the cases themselves. So I'll read just one case, just to illustrate my point. For example, outbreak.my, so there's this gentleman, 30 years old, right? Case 6743 is a 30-year-old Malaysian man who was found dead in Rompin, Pahang. The result of the COVID-19 sample test taken during the autopsy was positive on 12 May, right? The case is under investigation and they dubbed the death as COVID-19. So let me just basically summarize the whole story, right? They found a dead body in Rompin, Pahang, 30 years old man. They swabbed the dead body and they say, oh, we find COVID-19, so he died of COVID-19. That is not intelligent, nor is that genuine, right? That's not a way to classify the deaths. Right, so if you go through this data, you'll find all kinds of cases whereby it's very suspect. For example,
so sorry if I interrupt you just a little bit. What do you think caused the death of this gentleman?
That's my point. We don't know, right? But just because you swap the dead body and you say, we've got a positive test on the PCR test, which I will want to deconstruct later on in this conversation about the PCR test itself, right? How can you swap a dead body and say, oh, we found a positive test, this person must have died of COVID-19? That is not scientific at all. I'll read another case for you so that you get what I'm trying to say. Case 6780.
I think I got what you're trying to say, but I'll let you read another case, no problem.
Sure. So case 6780 is a 39-year-old Malaysian man who has a history of valvular heart disease and suffered a recent accident earlier this year that caused fractures of major bones of both lower limbs, resulting in limited mobility. He was pronounced dead on 12th of May, and they classed his death as COVID-19. This is someone who has a history of valvular heart disease and recently suffered an accident. If you ask me, as a layman, simple logic, if you ask me what did he die of, I would say he probably died because of his heart disease and the recent accident, instead of swabbing him and saying that he died because of COVID-19. So it is this kind of case, which if you go through the data, you'll find a lot of it that casts doubt on how they define the cause of death. Okay, they say that he died of COVID-19, but in actual reality, what's happening is they test him positive for COVID-19 on the basis of the PCR test. You're saying this person died of COVID-19. So I think that's where the fraud is happening. So
you made your point. And I agree with you. For this example, right? Yeah, it's probably unfair. They shouldn't have put it down as COVID-19 cause of death because he had an accident and he died shortly after that. It could have been the accident. It could have been, blunt force trauma or some other severe injury. True, but how many percent of the mortality, the people who have died of COVID-19, do you think was actually misdiagnosed? I mean, how many percent of it is something like this? Like, do you say like 90% of it was actually caused by an accident or a heart attack rather than COVID-19?
That's a very good question. Let me try to unpack, right? So how many percent of these COVID-19 deaths are actually misdiagnosis? We do not know. The only way to know is to look at the facts of each case and deduce it. So I would recommend everyone to go to outbreak.my and look at the facts of the cases that are reported and validated by the authorities themselves and decide for yourself, does this make sense or not? Because if we know, okay, in statistics, right, there's something we call random error, and another thing we call systemic error. If it's a random error, it could just be an outlier from the data, right, that does not represent the majority of cases. But a systemic error comes from misreporting, misdiagnosis, or misdefinition. When you have a systemic error in a data set, and because of misdefinition and misdiagnosis, you're in for a lot of hurt because you're going to draw a lot of false conclusions from the data set, right, due to misdefinition. So If this is in fact true, right, verifiably true, then we can stand to reason that we should really doubt what the authorities are putting out in terms of classifying cause of death. Because like I mentioned to you, in the UK, they have a top-down directive that says if anyone dies of COVID-19 within 60 days of testing positive, it doesn't matter if you're shot, got into an accident, died of your cancer that you had for 10 years, you will class you as a COVID-19 death.
And
there are
at this point, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think you've made your point, so I'm not interrupting you because I disagree with you. It's like, no, I'm going to stop you there. I agree with you, right? If someone's got COVID-19, but he got shot in the head, what caused the death? The gunshot wound, right? I agree.
Yep.
But how many % of those people who died of COVID was actually
that's why you have to look at the data.
We don't know, right? And yes, that's why correlation does not imply causation, right? Yes, COVID-19 was correlated in this case's death. It may not have been the cause. Fine, I agree with that. But in the same way, right, some people who, in Malaysia, we don't have this directive that you say NHS has, where if you have COVID-19, that will be the cause of death, even if you get into an accident, right? So in Malaysia, it's not like that. So if you get COVID-19 and you recover, right, you know the Malaysian numbers is like 4,800 something, the rate numbers, those are the people who died, right? And then recovered is what, 600,000 plus, and that number is in green, right? And I think one thing we tend to imagine is a binary thing. It's 0, 1, 0, 1, or 0, 1, right? So red, you die, green, you survive, you're healthy, you're happy, you're living like normal. But we don't realize that actually there's a spectrum between 0 and 1. You get where I'm going here, right? So in between, you may have something as mild as, I know, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Or you may have vasculitis leading to cardiac, myocardial infarction, which is heart attack, right? So when they get heart attack after that, the cause of death is myocardial infarction, meaning a heart attack. But actually, the risk of vasculitis, the risk of MI increases after you've been infected by COVID-19. And that is not attributed to COVID-19. So I would say in the same way, there are just as many deaths that were caused by COVID-19, but not reported as COVID-19. In the same way, there are a lot of side effects or that people attribute to the vaccine that was not caused by the vaccine. I mean, you can use the same logic, right? So, but then how do we attribute? So how do we attribute whether that thing caused it or not, right? So the concept,
that's my point.
Biostatistics is the thing, what we call the p-value, right? So when you put the data together, right, we actually measure this. There's a mathematical constant where we're able to look at the p-value. So if the p-value is below 0.5, right, it is a high. It shows that there's high statistic significance, right? And it's most likely caused by what we're studying. All right. So when you pick 1 or 2 cases where, oh, this guy got into an accident or this guy had a heart attack, it could not have been COVID-19. But like how many %? And the thing about science is nothing is absolute, right? We can't say 100% it was caused by COVID-19. Neither can we say 100% it was not caused by COVID-19. And then we're pretty much stuck in a loop right now.
Yeah. So okay. So this is the crux of the problem that I have, right? So I'm trying to be very graceful here about the situation, but let me just bluntly say out what my problem with the thinking is. Last year, when people were dying of what we call COVID-19, when they have 2 or 3 comorbidities, we're saying, oh, they died definitely of COVID-19. We're not going to question that. This year, when people are dying a few days after taking the vaccines, we are saying, oh, correlation is not causation. It's not the vaccines that cause it. It's probably the durian that he ate after the vaccine. So I feel there's inconsistency in applying the logic. It's disingenuous. This is how I feel. Like for example, right? Like I have started a movement on my own with a bunch of friends. We call it the Malaysian Freedom Movement. There's 77 people in the group right now. So it's an organic movement that we started. So in that movement, we have one person, a couple of people who have vaccine injured. So one of them, a lady, she suffered vaccine injury from pneumococcal vaccination when she went to Umrah, right? And you understand, once you speak to someone who has been vaccine injured or has faced a vaccine death in their family, you will understand why they are anti-vaccine. The problem now is as soon as someone says someone's died of vaccines, whatever, you immediately label him or her as conspiracy theorist. You immediately discard that pain that person has had. So I think, you know, we can talk about the vaccine side later on, but right now I just want to bring the discussion to the PCR test, which is basically what we all rest our conclusions on.
Before we go to another point, can I just, because we're about to move to another point, so while we're here, very quickly, I empathize with your friend, all right, and I can sympathize with that, because I know it's very difficult when you lose someone because of, you know, actually any death, whatever the cause, right? It's hard to bear, right? Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Do you know anyone who's died of COVID-19 personally, your friend? Do you know of anyone who has died of COVID-19 recently?
No.
I've known people who died of COVID-19. I just lost a friend about a week ago. Now, in the same way, would it be sensitive to say that he didn't die of COVID-19? I mean, just a mental.
I get.
Like, wouldn't it? If I were to, like, you know, just discount it's like, no, it's not vaccine. Like, you know, I don't think so. You're just, you know, being an anti-vax. But would someone else on the other end of the crime who says that, well, COVID-19 is all fake, and 4,800 people who died in Malaysia, they've not died of COVID-19. It's probably just accidents and heart attacks and flu and things like that. Would you be, in a way, right, sort of undermining, downplaying the seriousness of, I mean, this guy isn't like an old 60-year-old. He's like late 40s, man. I mean, I'm shaken by it still. I've had friends who've died. I've had friends who deal with, and the thing is, it's more real to me, and maybe because I'm in that group of people, right? I'm a frontliner. I see patients, I occasionally see them, and they happen to be COVID-19. I have friends who work in a hospital, and they see these things. They've not had a day off for almost 2 years, bro. All right? They're not paid by Big Pharma. They're not driving Mercedes. They're like everyday people like you and me, except they've not taken a day off to stay at home and watch Netflix. And they're suffering for what? A fake disease? Influenza outbreak has never reached this level, bro. All right? There was a massive influenza outbreak in 2019, right? Yes, we made a lot of money because people came for Tamiflu and they came for the flu injection first time ever, right? We ordered a lot of flu vaccines after that, and nobody came to take the vaccine in 2020 because of COVID-19, right? We lose money too. But anyway, the point is, if this infection is fake, then, you know, like if you were to say it's fake, you, in a way, wouldn't you say that you'll be doing the same thing? You're not empathizing with someone who lost someone of COVID-19.
I
right?
understand argument, and I empathize with it. So this is the problem, right? The problem with the media is that it frames everyone who does not believe in this is an uncaring human being that doesn't care about his fellow man, that, you know, denying death and all that. So
here, for this thing, right, we are allies. I hate the media, bro. I hate mainstream media just as much as you do.
High five. That's something that we can agree on, bro.
All right. Yeah.
Something that
so
we can agree on.
Yeah. So go on, make your point.
So,
sorry, interrupted you.
Yeah. So like I just want to make clear, right? We are not downplaying their deaths. We are not saying that they are all complicit in the lie. That's not what we're saying, right? But when we are talking about facts, right, we have to take emotions out of the picture, right? Like, for example, if we ask the question, what did this person die of? We cannot let our emotions decide what we think this person died of, right? For example, as I mentioned to you, if the person has 2 or 3 comorbidities, right, I think it's more likely that the person died because of the comorbidity. That's just to me, right?
Okay,
but
you think it's more likely that the person died because of his comorbidity, right? Okay.
Yeah, rather than the virus, because let me just make another point.
Because
90% of people, 90% of people don't even have symptoms and they recover without any medical intervention. So what I'm saying is that,
No,
yes,
no, no, wait,
okay,
wait. It's 17% that don't have any symptoms.
17 or 70?
17% of those who are infected will be asymptomatic. 80% will have
17?
mild. Sorry,
Uh, 17.
17%.
Well,
17%
I've looked at different statistics and they tell a different story, right? So this is the problem, because the problem is we're operating on two different sets of facts. Okay, so what I would like to abstract away from the discussion is that, because what's happening right now is very symptomatic of all the conversations that I've had with people on the other side. You come to the table with your set of facts, I come to the table with my set of facts, we disagree about what the facts are, we fight over it.
Yeah, sure.
My numbers are right, my numbers are right.
Yeah, I'll just stop you for a short while here. The thing is, I don't hate you. And at any point, I'm not attacking you as a person, but just the opinions. Because I think the one thing that is for sure right now is we do have a disagreement, right? I can't say I agree with you every step of the way, and neither can you say you agree with me every step of the way. So we will have to disagree at some points. You will make your points, and I agree. I will make my points, and at no point can I convince you 100% to come over to my camp, because my camp is cooler, right? Neither can you ask me to come to your camp, and we can't possibly do it by the end of the night. I mean, that would be impossible. But the point is, we're having a dialogue. Yeah, we're having a dialogue, which is something I think no one else has done, right? I feel like I've not seen anyone else try to do a friendly dialogue where you give some of your points, I give some of your points, and the fact that we do this in a reasonably friendly manner, I believe we could do this again, right? And we could tackle more issues, because I don't think we can talk everything and finish it by tonight. And I want to be respectful of your time as well, right? So we can't go too far. So I think the points that you brought up, let's just stick to this, because I know it looks like you've got a paper ready. There are 100 points there, right? All the things that you're going to go through.
No, I just wrote down the points that you made just to make sure I'll be able to address them. That's all.
So let's go back to the main issue right now. I mean, there are a lot of other topics, but let's talk about the ones that you brought up right now. Like when do you want to end this, bro? I think we have to end it before midnight, bro. What do you think?
Like I would quote Captain America, I could do this all day.
Oh yeah, okay,
so it's up
fine.
to you.
Yeah. I mean, of course, people will come and go. Some will log out, but I mean, this is actually between you and me anyway. So anyway, so you're saying, so yeah, you feel that the person could have died because of the multiple comorbids and not the infection, COVID-19, right? And you're saying that based on?
Okay, so this is why the discussion, so this is why the discussion has to go to the PCR test, because that is the bedrock of how we say this person has COVID-19.
All right, so before we go to the PCR test, because that will be the next point, right? I think in the same way, I agree with you. We cannot say that 100% of all the 4,800 deaths in Malaysia, right, were definitely 100% caused by COVID-19. But in the same way, you can't say 100% that guy didn't die of COVID-19.
Okay, right? Fair. Let's agree to disagree. Sorry, man. I haven't had my dinner.
Yeah, go ahead, bro. Go ahead. So, like, when you eat, that's when I make my point, lah. All right. All right. Makes sense, right? Makes sense, right? So, yeah, the thing is, you feel that the comorbids killed him because, you know, you feel that it's the multiple comorbids and not COVID-19. But are you 100% sure? I mean, you can't say that, right? You can't say you're 100% sure that he didn't die of COVID-19. Right, and the thing is, when the numbers increase, the p-value actually improves, right? So the statistic becomes more significant the bigger your sample size. So if like 10 people die, right? Okay, let's say 10 people ate chicken rice and die, 6 hours later, exactly, right? Yeah. Should I go on?
Carry on, man. I'm just gonna get some water.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Actually, yeah, I'm a bit thirsty as well. All right, okay. Let's say if 10 people ate chicken rice and they died the next morning, right? In under 6 hours, right? Then we can't say that chicken rice is the cause of heart attack, right? Now, if
Yep.
1 million people die exactly 6 hours after eating chicken rice. Would that be significantly, would that be statistically significant?
Yes.
Right? So the thing is, the more number of people dying from something, now that raises a red flag. And we have to investigate. And we find correlation, right? Again, it's correlation again. And correlation does not imply causation. Unless the statistic is significant. Right? And that's how we actually measure the people. It looks like most cases, right, out of 3.5 million people who died in the world, it does look like, right, statistically, it is significant that it is caused by COVID-19. Right, or at least
so your point is
that is novel, which is not a bacteria, and it's way more severe than your
Sure. So, okay, to give a short response to your answer, right, what I would say, again, I would point back to the random error, systemic error. So this kind of problems can occur, false analysis can occur if we, sorry, I'm just going to get some water. If there's a systemic error in interpreting the data and analyzing data, this is where we can get into huge trouble if we have wrong definitions for diagnosing the cause of death. So that is what I would say to that. And I think let's not belabor this point any longer, because I don't think we're getting much further talking about this particular subtopic. So let's just agree to disagree, and maybe we can move on to the next item.
Okay, maybe I'll just rephrase it this way. 3.9 million people have died worldwide.
Because of systemic error. That's my short answer to your question. Yeah. If we are misdiagnosing
3.9 million is.
So how do you prove this? And what I would say is extraordinary claims require extraordinary proofs.
So I would like to hear your claim then. Yeah.
If we are systematically misdiagnosing the deaths because of the results of the PCR tests, then we have a big problem, because we could be misdiagnosing all of them. That's what I'm saying. Right? So that's why the discussion has to progress to the PCR test, because that's the bedrock of how we decide someone has COVID or not, right? It's by a binary PCR test that I can demonstrably prove to be fundamentally flawed, if not fraudulent. That's what I want to talk about next.
All right. All right. So
right,
you're saying that
3.9 million,
there's a good chance that none of them died of COVID-19 because of something you're going to talk about.
Fraudulent testing.
That's the point you're gonna make. All right. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So let's start the conversation on the PCR, right? Okay, so I'll just share what I've researched and read so far on the PCR test, right? So the creator of the PCR test is a gentleman called Kerry Mullins, right? And he died in December 2019, I think, if I'm not mistaken. He is the inventor of the PCR test, and if you look him up, he himself has said the PCR should never be used to test for viruses, because one, it doesn't take into account viral load. It's a binary yes or no. Do you have that particle? Yes or no, right? It doesn't account for viral load. And the point is, if your viral load is like super small, right, you're not infectious. You just have it in your system. You're not infectious. You're not a threat to society, right? You don't need to be locked down for 14 days. But I digress. So the PCR test can be subjected to massive abuse and manipulation. Okay, and allow me to explain how this abuse is possible. All right. So last year, I think was it June or July, there was an article that came out on New York Times. Okay, so this is a super credible mainstream news outlet, right? New York Times, and I can share it with the audience later after this, maybe. In New York, they found out that 90
from the New York Times article. All right.
Yes, I can share it with the audience after this. So the New York Times article basically covers the story about how in New York, up to 90% of the cases that are tested positive can be false positives. Because of why? Because of the cycle rate. So how PCR works is that you take a genetic sample, you amplify it, right? Depending on how much you amplify it, it will affect the results that you get. So from what I remember, I could be wrong, but from what I remember, if you cycle it below 30 cycles, you will get a negative result. If you cycle it above, I think it was 55 or something, I can't remember, you will get a positive result. So my next question is, if we know this thing can be subjected to abuse, what are the chances of it happening when the interests are aligned in saying that there are more cases so that there can be more lockdowns and more authoritative measures by the government, right? So if we can question the credibility of the PCR test, I think the whole thing falls apart, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so even the inventor of the PCR himself said that this should never be used to test for viruses. So why are we doing this? Is my question.
All right. You know how PCR works, right?
I know a bit about it. I've read about it, not extensively.
All right. Maybe you tell your version of how PCR works, and I'll give you a point after that.
From what I know, the PCR can be cycle amplified to certain cycles. And if it's below a certain cycle, you will get a negative result. If it's above a certain cycle, you can get a positive result. And from the New York Times article itself, it says there's one doctor who said, why are we amplifying the genetic material over 35 times? Of course, we will get a positive result. So he's blowing the whistle, saying, hey guys, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't keep on doing this because we're going to draw false conclusions from improper application of this diagnostic test, is what he's saying. And the other point was, of course, I related to the viral load. The PCR does not test for viral load. It just tells you whether you have that substance that is coded for COVID-19 or not.
Whether the antigen is present or not in the blood, right, or in the sample.
So just to wrap up my point, if we are making policy decisions based on something that can be manipulated to that extent, I think this is extremely dangerous and we should stop doing this.
So you're saying that if the cycle is repeated more than 40 times roughly, right? More than 35 times, more than 40 times.
I'll put the New York Times article.
Definitely a false negative. Is that the claim you're making?
Let me just pull up the article and maybe
I know. I mean, don't
to...
worry about the article. I actually have seen something like that before. But so this was your claim, all right? If the cycle is repeated too many times, right?
Yep, it can be a positive result.
False negative.
If it goes beyond certain threshold, it becomes a false positive. It's biased to showing a positive result if you cycle it. The higher you cycle it, the more it's biased to showing a positive result.
Can you explain for the benefit of the audience here? All right. What happens in a cycle? What do you mean by cycle? And why would that?
I don't know. I have just read it from the New York Times article. And I've seen other doctors talk about this. Doctors from World Doctors Alliance, people like Dr. Andrew Kaufman, Sherry Tenpenny, so they all talked about this. And obviously the mainstream media is going to call them as quacks or whatever, right? But the point is, when we have competing claims to one thing, what we need to do is to weigh the evidence on both claims and decide which one makes more sense.
Right,
so I have found that...
I agree with that statement. We should weigh the evidence. Right, like, okay, so you're going to look at the article right now, but okay. For the audience, right, if you were to go and Google the same thing, you will actually find articles that debunk this anyway, right? You will find that the WHO actually says that statement was not actually made, right?
I don't think WHO is an authority.
It actually reduces it increases the sensitivity while reducing the specificity, right? But it doesn't cause a false negative, or at least you can't say 100% it is a false negative. Now, okay, since well, you didn't, I think you tried to explain what PCR is. Now I'm gonna just quickly roughly explain what it is. Anyway, okay, so PCR, what happens is, all right, they put all the nucleotides, all the types of amino acids that form that protein, right, in sort of like a pool, right? And you code for one particular type of protein, and that is the antigen that you're looking for. So for example, I'm looking for the spike protein antigen, or maybe a core antigen. It could be an IgG, it could be an IgM. So when I choose that particular thing to look for, right? Well, what PCR does is it amplifies it. So if this thing, if this particular protein is present in a sample, right? Let's say a sample of this huge, right? This much of, say, blood, all right? And it is just one dot, and this thing is present. So if I amplify it, because I give you the building blocks to form this antigen if they exist, right? So because the coding is there, so you just repeat the building blocks. So they come together along the line, and if you amplify it enough, you're more likely to see it. All right, so it's basically amplification. Like, so I'm zooming in to find if that thing is there. Now, if that thing is not there, you can amplify it no matter how much you zoom as much as you like. All right, you will never find it. So the thing is, you're able to and if you're amplifying, if you use PCR, you're able to find something that where the presence is small. Right, that's how PCR works. Now the thing is, if you increase the cycle, you're more likely to pick it up. So the thing is, if the viral load is extremely small to begin with, we're not even looking for a virus, we're looking for the antigen, right? The presence of an antigen, right? So if you increase enough, you are more likely to find it, right? If it's not there, it will not be there. So you can increase it. If you increase enough, you'll be extremely sensitive to the point that someone who's been exposed to it but not having a serious an active infection, right, might show up as well. But the thing is, if it's positive, and on top of that, you're correlating with the fact that he's got clinical symptoms that are suggestive of this illness that we've discovered, which I've explained earlier, a pneumonia that is a lot more, for a viral pneumonia, that's a lot more severe than a typical viral pneumonia, even more severe than a bacterial pneumonia. That does not, you know, doesn't seem to recover with antibiotics, right? Your azithromycin and augmentin cocktail is not working, and on top of that, when you do a PCR test, it's positive. Doesn't matter how many cycles, but yes, they've decided to put the cycle at about less than 35, just to be fair, right? But increasing the cycle will not give you a false negative. It will not give you, oh, this is 100% false, this thing does not exist. Now the thing, if the thing doesn't exist, you can amplify as many times, you will not see it. And that's how PCR works. I hope that makes it clear to you. I mean, that's the best I can do. Biology lecture, so.
For attempting to explain, I really appreciate it. What I would say is, I'm not an expert and I cannot verify what you say, obviously, right? But you know, the way I got this information was I was following a doctor called Dr. Andrew Kaufman. He's part of the World Doctors Alliance. So so again, so we're going to get to the situation whereby
the issue is, like, you will say, okay, I read from this New York Times, right? And then I will show you another link on this website, a fact checker that shows that no, this is not true. This guy didn't say this, or what. And then you show me another article, and I'll show you another article. Then you name drop this doctor so and so. Well, I'll name drop Dr. Paul Offit, the top vaccine expert, right? Or well, I can name drop basically all the doctors in the world who think COVID-19 is real, and they outnumber the few doctors that think COVID-19 is not real,
but
right?
Majority opinion does not approximate truth. Truth does not care whether you're in the majority or minority.
Now, the majority, well, when you say, oh, a big majority does not equals truth. True, I agree. But it comes down to who are they, right? So a big majority of artists, or a big majority of, say, kindergarten teachers, as compared to a majority of doctors or people in the healthcare, you know, healthcare professionals, then it's different. The biases are different. They are not on equal ground. And I'm not saying that doctors are the best when it comes to all their opinions. When it comes to healthcare opinions, you would have to listen, you would have to, you know, go and seek a doctor, right? Right? And if a majority of the doctors think this way, and I agree, some doctors may have a fringe idea, and nothing wrong with fringe ideas. Those should be explored, and it should be debated in the scientific community in the proper way. They should write a journal, excuse me, and they should publish it, all right? And it should be peer-reviewed, and it should be debated the proper way, right? What's happening is this majority, a handful of them, will write an open letter instead and make YouTube videos and write blogs, which is not what scientists been doing all this while. It's not the scientific method You get what I mean? Now,
Sure,
and
the
like I
problem
said, you
is
can
the
doctor
doctors
this,
are being sent and they being
doctor
removed.
Doctor Zubin the Mania, Doctor Vinay Prasad, Doctor Mohana Gandhi, Doctor Doctor Dato Doctor Musa, Doctor like I just keep naming all the doctors who think COVID-19 exists,
Sure.
and you'll definitely outnumber the number of doctors you can name who think that COVID-19 doesn't exist, right?
Sure. But again, I fall back to my point. I agree when you say
Yeah.
appeals to authority. You cannot look at the authority of a doctor and a kindergarten teacher the same when it comes to healthcare. I agree with that. I'm not saying all appeals to authority is wrong, but what I'm saying is appeals to authority are not automatically correct. Now, what we have is a like for like comparison. There are doctors who say this A. There are doctors who say B. There are more doctors, apparently, from what we see, there are more doctors who say B than doctors that say A. So which one should you choose? So we are at an impasse whereby we have certified doctors. I can name drops as well. I can talk about doctors like Sucharit Bhakdi, who's a PhD in microbiology in Germany.
The point is,
you have your authority, we have our authority, so it's just a matter of shopping for authority. So now the problem is not that. The problem is, if I believe A and you believe B, why can't we go our separate ways and believe whatever we want and make decisions based on those beliefs? Why do you have to coerce people into taking a certain action when they don't believe whatever you believe? So this is why I say the problem is it's an infringement of individual rights. People who do not believe in it do not want to take it, but you want to pressure them, bully them, shame them, and I'm not saying you, I'm just saying the government, right, from their pronouncements and how it goes, that's how it looks like. And of course, you say there's no mandatory vaccination, there are no this yet, but there is that subtle social pressure and that subtle demonization of people who do not want to take the vaccine. This is our problem, right? This is our problem. I think if you're on opposite sides, you will feel what we're saying and you will understand what we're saying. When you are in opposition to power and they say do this or else, right? This is where I quote where the problem is. So what I would like to say is that it's okay that we disagree. It's okay that you believe a different paradigm than me. We're fine. We can still be friends. But what's not okay is if I believe different paradigm, I want to enforce it on you, and I want to demonize you for not believing in my perspective. I think that's where the problem is.
Well, I think yeah, that I agree with that 100%. You shouldn't shame someone just because they're on the other side of the camp, right? And again, like I say, it goes both ways, right? There will be the extreme, and I don't think you're one of those extremists, right? I don't. From my short interaction with you, I don't think you're extreme in that camp, right? So the extreme will say that, well, vaccines is the mark of the beast, right? That basically shows that you're working for the devil, right? And Bill Gates is a Satanist, and his plan is to bring worldwide genocide, right? And all the doctors who's trying to promote vaccination, who's trying to treat COVID-19, all my friends who are working tirelessly, they're all, shrills of big pharma who just can't get down off their high horse, right? Technically, that's name calling as well, right? And you're not doing that, and I appreciate that. I mean, you've so far not said anything bad about me, unless I wasn't listening, but I'm pretty sure you haven't, right? And I appreciate that, right? So far, this has been very civil for an issue that is extremely polarized, and that causes the divide. So, like, hey, you get to make your point, and I get to make my point, and at the end of that full discussion where you disclose all the things that you want to say, and I disclose all the things I want to say, you make a decision, you weigh your risk and your benefit, and you decide, you know what, I'm not going to take the vaccine. Bro, I'm not going to shame you. I'm not going to shame you. But if to hear one side of the story and then decide I'm not going to vaccinate, my appeal is this: like, hear me out. This is why I think the disease is real, and this is why I think the vaccine works, right? I'm seeing these patients, I'm seeing these people dying. My friends are working tirelessly and stuff like that. And I think coming back to the point where you say, like, this bunch of doctors are claiming A and this bunch of doctors are claiming B. But how do we know whether A and B is the truth, right? And you're saying, like, why can't we just agree to disagree and go our separate ways? Well, the fact is, something has to be true. there is truth, right? In reality, right? I'm not saying absolute truth as in God exists or not.
But,
There's
but
another
that's
thing
the
altogether.
problem. You would assert your truth, and I would assert my truth, and we'll end impasse.
Your truth and my truth may not be the same, right? This is what we call it relativism, right? So the thing is, but there's a very important question to answer right now is, does the virus exist? Yes or no? Does it kill people? Yes or no? And it's important that we answer that, because these doctors are trying to treat it, and these doctors are saying that it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Right? And the thing is,
so
we
that's
agree to disagree and go our separate ways. Some people are going to die. So coming to the doctors who claim A and doctors who claim B, you say, let's just go our separate ways. But maybe how about this? All right, this is my suggestion. Instead of A and B go our separate ways, some are claiming A, some are claiming B. Why don't we find out the truth? And how do we find out the truth? Why don't we look at the evidence, at the science of it, right? We look at the data of it, and actually study it. The virus do exist, right? I think the most obvious objective, right? Some people say like, hey, God doesn't exist, right? And if I were to convince you whether God exists or not, I'll say, okay, all right, I give you crazy absolute, ultimatum, all right? You think God doesn't exist? You go out right now to the middle of the street, you get struck by lightning, then you agree that God exists. Right? That's a crazy ultimatum, right? But very easy for COVID-19, whether it exists or not. It's very easy. Just go to the hospital right now. Just go to the hospital right now and see, right? People who are dying. I'm just talking from the aspect of science. No politics involved. The way this disease presents itself, flu-like symptom with a high risk of lung involvement and pneumonia. On top of that, is you get autoimmune related issues with how it affects interferon, how it causes vasculitis, how it increases the risk of myocardial infarction and blood clot, and all these other things, right? Blood clot formation, a stroke, right? Heart attack, deep vein thrombosis, all manner of very scary things that doesn't typically happen with influenza. It's very obvious that this is not flu. It's not your seasonal flu. You just look at this. If you just go to the hospital and look at these fellows and look at your blood work and look at the image of the virus under electron microscope and see that it exists, right? The genomic sequence that they've sequenced it and how it actually produces the spike protein, which is real. After all our sessions, I can imagine you still don't want to vaccinate. I'm not going to hate you, bro. In the immortal words of Michael Jackson, you can still be my brother in no matter if you're vax or anti-vax.
So it seems as if you feel, maybe you have this assumption, or you feel that I don't want to look at evidence that does not affirm my beliefs. That could be true, whatever, right? But what I'm saying I'm willing to do is this, and I'm going to make it clear to everyone. My weight of evidence is this: if you can give me the virus, let me experience it, I will affirm if it's true, right? If it's real, I will affirm that it's true.
Yeah. So that's an ultimatum, right? So you're saying if you get COVID-19, you definitely believe that it's COVID-19, or
yes. So like to me, knowledge can be theoretical, knowledge can be whatever, but to me, the knowledge that I will hold on tight to is experiential knowledge. If I've experienced it, then I will believe it. I'm not invalidating anyone else's experience with it. Maybe they've experienced it and they believe it. So, but that is just my parameter, because I'll just be frank here and I'll just disclose to everyone. Since last year in April, when I decided what this thing was, I have not, sans going to a building or being stopped at a shop for not wearing a mask. I don't wear a mask. I don't use sanitizers. I don't distance. I don't observe any of the SOPs. I have not fallen sick. So my position, my stance is, if I do not believe it to be true, I will not bow down to the authorities.
All right. So if you do not believe it to be true, then it can't.
I will not validate it.
All right. All right.
I feel like
unless you get the virus.
Right. You can decide whatever you believe, and you can decide whatever you want to validate, whatever you want to follow. I think that is very important. That is the heart of liberty, right? Is to be able to live your truth,
believe
being,
what you want to be.
without being attacked, man. Because those of us on this side, are being attacked, bro. Let me just put it that way. Yeah.
Okay. So would you say I'm disrespecting you or
No,
attacking
not
you
at
in
all.
any
You have
way?
been very civil, and I really appreciate you. I'm very thankful and grateful that you've invited me. It's very gentlemanly of you, and you've conducted this interview in a very, like, you came in with good faith, and I think that's great, and I treasure people like you. Like I said, if we come to a vaccine apartheid, I will look for you, Jackson, to back us up.
Okay, my concept is I'm taking an alt middle concept. I'm not sure if you heard of this term. I didn't come up with it. A few people have been using this term, right? I'm not taking a centrist view. I'm not taking a right view or a left view, but what we call an alt middle, where I look at what the guys on the right are saying, what the guys on the left are saying. I evaluate it. I combine it with evidence and data and knowledge, right? And I try to do what's right for myself and my community,
Sure.
right? So now, coming from my point of view, and I'm not doing this because I want to make more money or anything like that, or be more popular, but I mean, you know what I mean? Because I believe this infection is real, and when we come from our point of view, it's not like we just want to shame people, but because we don't want people to get infected and die, right? So I mean, maybe the thing we can start to do is not to assume malintention in the person on the other end, right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what happens when those girls saw you not wearing masks. They think like you're a crazy lunatic who wants to infect everyone and kill people, you know? That's the wrong mindset. But at the same time, there are people on the other side of the cameras who will call me a baby killer. It's like, hey, you vaccinate kids, you kill babies, and you cause autism. But you know what? I inject those same vaccines to my daughters. I inject them myself. All right? And in the vaccines, this is not a case where I'm like telling all of you, you have to take this vaccine that we're serving you, you know what I mean? But in this, for the first time, right, our skin is in the game. When we advocate for this vaccine, we take it ourselves. And we are the first bunch of fellas who took it. Bro, you know how scary it was for me. Okay, so I'm a GP, right? So I see like typically 40, 50 patients a day, right? Before during the early parts of the pandemic, I mean, we didn't have enough face masks at that time because everything was sold out. Can you imagine I'm seeing someone, he's coughing. I have no way to protect myself. We haven't had the vaccine. I have to go home to my wife and children. I mean, freaking out. And I have friends who've not seen their kids for like 6 months at that time, or friends who actually, you know, brought something back to their parents and they get infected and stuff like that. And it sucks, right? When the vaccines arrived, I mean, like it really elevated, like, you know, that the burden was lifted. Now I know that I'm less likely to transmit something to my kids, right? And at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I'm not doing this for like ulterior motives, you know. You know what I mean? I don't earn anything from every vaccine that someone takes. Medical practitioners around the world, we were the first to take it, right? And we didn't take it because of blind faith. We look at the evidence, we look at the study you showed, like the first vaccine to come out, right? The mRNA vaccine, right? Like 44,000 people were involved in the phase 3 clinical trials. We saw how when they found 170 people got infected and unblind them, 162 were from the placebo group, right? The group that did not get the vaccine. And only among those who got the vaccine, only 8 of them got infected. Now, the p-value was significant, and when we saw the real world studies when it came out, you know, phase 4 clinical trials, what we call surveillance marketing surveillance, right? In the real world setting, we see the same efficacy in countries where they vaccinate.
This is the bigger problem. So again, you locate the problem at it's a public health issue, we need to solve this. I locate the problem at this is a political issue. We cannot let the government do this and treat us this way. So in that sense, the debate doesn't really cross because we're looking at different problems, right? You
but
locate.
Okay, I think I'm kind of meeting you midway, as in like the political aspect of it. I kind of agree with you somewhat, right? It's unfair, it infringes on like liberty and some of our personal rights, right? Yes, the poor are suffering. I don't deny that, but on the public health side, I mean, I feel that the political issues doesn't negate what's happening
The
in the
public,
public health front. You know what I mean? Is it
yeah,
possible to like, hey, maybe it's true that the governments are corrupt does not equals the virus being fake. Would you at
okay.
least agree
So
with me on that?
sure, let me address that, right? So, like, okay, so we can have an opinion, let's say, on fast food, right? Whether you like it or not, if healthy or not, whatever. But the point is, the government has never said, oh, everyone has to eat McDonald's today, or else we're going to threaten you with this. What's happening right now, the government is threatening everyone to consume a product or else. This is against the idea of consumer or individual sovereignty and free market, right? Because, you know, every other product in this world has to compete for the dollar votes, right? So how competition always brings about better progress, right? So we want to get higher quality products at a cheaper price, so you need to enable competition. But when it comes to the vaccines, there are no competition, bro. Like, everyone has to take it or else. And
But
let's look at the track record.
Okay, but I would say that there is competition because we're not given only one vaccine. Like you
No,
have
well,
Pfizer,
okay,
you have
sure. Let
vaccines
me
from China, you have Gamaleya, you have Sputnik from Russia.
sure,
You have,
sure,
even in China, you have a few options. You have CanSino, you have
sure,
Sinoware, you have
sure. So
Sinopharm.
let me make
They're not owned by the same people. You know what I mean? And they're
sure. Let me
all,
make my overarching point.
yeah.
Let me make my more overarching point. Okay, so what's happening right now? Let me
And
just
I
tell
don't
you how
think
slow.
we are being forced to take it yet. I mean, like you say, if there's a vaccine appetite, then yeah, I mean that's unfair. I agree with you there, bro.
Okay, so let me make 2 points, right? The
Yeah,
first
yeah.
point is on the whether it's forced or not, right? So what have you been told since last year? Oh, vaccine is the only way out of this pandemic, blah 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 blah. If we don't vaccinate, we're not going to get our lives back. To me, that is already an element of coercion. You need to
Uh,
take this thing, or you cannot get out.
I think the statement that vaccine is the only way out is again people on certain side of the camp. All right, it is one of the way out of this pandemic.
Yeah,
Right,
and we can
there are
discuss
actually
about
other ways.
ivermectin as well. So
If we come up with a effective antiviral, some people are advocating for ivermectin. That's another issue altogether, but it is not the only way out. In fact, I also agree with you and say that natural immunity is also one of the ways out of this pandemic. If enough people get infected and either die or survive, and enough people have already been exposed to this virus, then the pandemic ends. It becomes an endemic, right? But of course, people have to die. Like a big percentage of the world will have to die, right? And as it is, we already had 3.5 million people dying. I mean, that's the issue with numbers is when I say, hey, 3.5 million people died, does it evoke an emotional response? Because like it's numbers, like, oh, 3.5 million. But you know, if I take a picture of this girl in Africa, you know, she's starving and she needs your help, everyone will donate money, right? Because it's a picture, you can relate that. But the thing is, your mind, the way you feel empathy is like you're designed to empathize with a face, with a person. You're not able to empathize with a number, right? And the thing is,
yeah,
and it's actually effective for you because if you are able to empathize with 3.5 million people, yeah, I mean, you will just mind blown. You'll just die from all that heartbreak, right? And I've lost a friend. I lost a friend. All right, and I've seen people die from COVID-19, real people, right? I've had a few friends who got infected, didn't die, and then I have this young guy. He's like late 30s. He actually got stage 4 of the disease, right? Lung involvement requiring ventilation.
let
Yeah.
me just make it clear that every is tragic and that I empathize. And I think a lot of people from my side, they do empathize with human beings as well, right? But
Well, unless
the
unless you say that the vaccine, I mean, the disease is a branding and it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? You can't empathize with a fake disease.
no. Okay, so this is the problem. The problem is we empathize with a human being. We just disagree on the diagnosis of what he died.
Like, hey, I'm
Okay,
trying to help you. Right? Okay,
sure.
I'll give you
Let
an
me
analogy. Perception, right? I think you're drowning. All right. You may or may not be drowning, right? Subjective, right? But you're in the water. Now, I'm trying to help you. All right. I'm going to come with the life jacket. I'm coming in and it's like, hey, take my hand. And like the guy in the water is now hating me for it. Like he's attacking me, right? Like what's wrong with this kind of attitude, right? But of course,
Okay.
your end is saying that the guys on the boat is hating that guy for being in the water. It's like, you're endangering yourself and the people around you. Yeah. I mean, the hate shouldn't happen, which is why we're having this dialogue, right? Like, okay, I kind of like this whole analogical argument that we're having right now. So, okay, imagine, so this salesman is selling you like this Herbalife supplement or something, right? Most of the time, and this is probably true, most of the time they really believe that the supplement works, right? Okay, true or not true is a whole different issue, but the issue now is like, this guy is doing it out of goodwill. Like, this vitamin works, make me healthy, and I want you to be healthy, and I think it's gonna, prevent arthritis and whatnot. Okay, and I don't speak for all of them. Some of these salesmen, they just want to make money, right? They're like, hey, I want to sell this product. They themselves also don't believe that it helps, but they're just doing it because they want to make money, and for that motive alone and nothing else, or they want to sell you insurance, not because they care, right? But because they want to make money, of course. But there's also a portion of them who really care. They sell you insurance because they don't want you to get into an accident and not have healthcare protection and stuff like that. Cancelled. What's her name? Letitia Wright. Have you heard of her? Letitia Wright.
No.
She was the actress who played the little sister of Black Panther, and she was supposed to be the lead for the next Black Panther 2, right? And she was fired and cancelled because she shared a video, the anti-vax video. I mean, she got cancelled just for that. And it's not right either, right? I mean, there has to be
that is what drives the resentment, man. That is what drives the resentment and the feeling of being aggressed.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is she was not cancelled by the government. She was cancelled by social media. So social media is causing the polarity and the divisiveness, right? It's social media, it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and we're cancelling each other and hitting each other and making judgment on each other based on opinions. And I mean, okay, I'm not saying that government has no role, but I'm saying that we are our greatest enemy. You get what I mean?
So, like I said, kudos to you and much respect to you, bro. You're a gentleman inviting me to have this public conversation, and you have not resorted to that formidable.
You're a gentleman as well for coming here. You've so far not thrown a single ad hominem at me. So I appreciate that, because I want other Texas, they hate me with a passion. Seriously, just like, hey bro, vaccinate, I want to save your life, and they're like, I hate you, bro. Yeah. So anyway, it goes both ways, and I think we can agree that if we can meet halfway, so like people can listen on both sides and then make the decision and not hate one another. Like, and I'm hoping I can create a bridge, be a model of behavior to the people on my side of the camp and see, hey, this is how you behave towards someone who disagrees with you, right? I interrupted you at some point, you interrupt me at some point, but we're not, flipping table, throwing chairs at each other. And I think, like, yeah, social media is to blame for half of this. And the thing is, it's probably impossible to do this in a comment section. We will probably hate each other. Yeah. And it's impossible. But live conversation, I mean, we don't want to lose our humanity, bro.
It's so really sad, man. We have to bring back the humanity in on all sides and respect each other's decisions. And don't assume, like you said, don't assume malintent. Don't assume like, oh, people on my side want the glory of being different or whatever. Or as well as people on my side cannot assume that you guys want to kill everyone else. So there has to be a point of whereby we can say, I understand where you're coming from, you understand where I'm coming from. We're both coming from a good place. We both want to help each other. We just disagree on the method. So that's fine. I respect your decision. You respect mine. Let's live together anyway.
Yeah. All right. That's good. I think this will be a good place to end it. And thanks again for and everyone else who was tuning in. All things considered, this went a lot better than I expected. Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's why I took up the invitation, man, because I know you come from a right place and it's very genuine. So lots of respect for you, and thank you so much, man. Have a good night.
Thanks for taking that leap of faith. Cheers and peace, bro. Peace out, and press the button to end. Finish.
Good night.